It's around the time of Halloween.
You know what this means for me? It means it ought to be a good time to look into an artist who's written some pretty freaky sounding music. Or has written some music that would fit with a pretty freaky kind of atmosphere. Nah, this would be a good time to choose a more casual type of drink. Yeah, let's get started.
Alrighty, having this opportunity to express my passion for this artist and their background has me pumped. Man, what a time for celebration. So what kind of artist of whom I know would fit in such a category of this, say, freaky or spooky style music? Why, this man. Know who that is? I bet most of you who may be viewing this don't. Well, here's a piece of his work. That's right, gamers. The man's name is Akira Yamaoka, most known for his work for the Silent Hill game franchise. Okay, so I had to research behind some video game history, which is a little out of my usual range of discussion, but I'll do my best to make everything I say as accurate as possible. Let me go ahead and say that I'm a big fan of Silent Hill. It's one of my most favorite video game series in the world. But of course, this video is about the man who creates the music that largely makes up the atmosphere in the franchise, let alone one of my favorite music artists in the world. So I'm not going to bother going over what happens in the plots of the games. Might mention little things that happen if I find it truly necessary with which to express a point. But don't worry, I won't spoil any big parts in the games. Alright, I'm glad I bought hard copies of these soundtracks. They're totally worth my money, as well as the space on my iPod. It compels me to see just how they decorate these, as well as how differently they decorate the cases and liner notes and stuff to these soundtracks than they do for the games. Of course, Silent Hill 3's soundtrack came with my copy of the game, like they've done with many other copies of the game. What's this? Japanese text on the side of the first Silent Hill soundtrack? And on the back. Same with 2 and 4. Interesting. I'm going to assume that these were manufactured in Japan. Well, in fact, according to a few Silent Hill related places on the web, the original soundtracks to the first 4 SH games were released individually only in Japan and Europe. What a privilege it is to be able to own these. Good thing tracks are listed in English because there are a lot of them. Before I bought this 2-disc Silent Hill 4 Japan released soundtrack, I bought this Silent Hill 4 soundtrack disc from eBay, which, unlike I was led to assume, was actually a bundle of remixes and a few tracks from the original soundtrack. I thought about returning it, but according to SilentHillMemories.net, it's a limited edition US exclusive CD that came with pre-ordered copies of Silent Hill 4 The Room. The copy of the game I bought from a local trade store didn't have this with it. Not only that, it seems to have some quality tunes that the original soundtrack doesn't have. So why complain?
Yamaoka has done work besides Silent Hill, but not only is that irrelevant to my intentions with this review, but I haven't played those other games for which Yamaoka has composed. So I feel that I couldn't properly discuss their soundtracks. Usually, if I haven't played the game, I'd rather not hear its soundtrack all through anyway, being that music and sound can be a big part for games, especially in this case. And I'd rather not spoil anything for myself. Let's go skim through these 4 particular albums by that particular music man, Akira Yamaoka, who has worked with that ambitious development crew, Team Silent, on those 4 games. And we can possibly look over some particular audio things that happen on the games.
To the original game released in 1999, the first Silent Hill soundtracks. Is this a mistranslation? Or maybe Japan habitually plurals the word soundtrack on the soundtrack CDs they produce. Hold on a second, let me see something. Yep, apparently all the Japan-released Silent Hill CDs are labeled original soundtracks. Well anyway, the first Silent Hill soundtrack could put you through just as much as the game does just by listening to it. You see, Yamaoka is the sound director to the Silent Hill games as well as he is a soundtrack composer. The sounds he creates for the games can be enough with which to test your sanity.
Oh, what the heck, man? What are you doing here, man? I'm I'm listening to some of the
your
most
Halloween
disturbing
spirit,
music
man? I
I've
don't
ever heard in my
understand.
life right now. What?
Well, back to business. Consisting of a massive 42 tracks, the soundtrack to the original Silent Hill emits roughly, and I do also mean that it is quite rough, a long half hour of thrashes and frankly hideous screeches and clangs until it gets to the last few tracks when it finally relieves you with these relaxing little melodies. According to a statement on Wikipedia cited to, well, this Swedish source, I don't know if that's a book or what, when Yamaoka first showed his music pieces for the original Silent Hill game to other members of Team Silent, they mistook the sounds he created as, and I quote, a game bug, making Yamaoka have to explain that he meant for it to sound like that. He consisted the music of thrashing sounds and really eerie ringing noises in order to add character to the game's atmosphere of insecurity and decay. Speaking of his style and sound directing, Yamaoka has stated in a behind-the-scenes clip that not only must a sound technician know how to create sounds, but the technician must also know when to use silence. When you play through Silent Hill, and you hear certain things during times that you'd expect to hear silence, the game could play around with you. Like here at this control tower to the drawbridge, when you enter the door on the bottom level, listen. Suddenly, in this small, dark room, you just start to hear this sinister-sounding music. Is there something evil in here, or are we being warned, or what? Well, there's a rock drill in here, which uses gasoline. I guess that's evil enough. Actually, when you think hard enough about it, probably too hard, that seems kind of prophetic. Beware! For each passing year after the time of this game's release, the standard price for gasoline will perpetually increase, and you'll never pay less than $2 per gallon again! At least if you're American. Woo! Just having fun here. I love these old games, and their music, of course. A track on this album that was not composed by Akira Yamaoka is track 41, Esperandote, composed by Rika Muranaka. Please excuse me if I'm mispronouncing anything. I figured I ought to try my best to give credit where credit is due. Muranaka has also done work for the Metal Gear Solid series and Castlevania Symphony of the Night. As stated in a message from Muranaka in the booklet to the first SH soundtrack, after Yamaoka had asked her to create a piece of music for Silent Hill, she suggested bandoneons, violins, and Spanish singing. Yamaoka thought for a moment and then smiled, saying, "That's great! Let's make a tango!" Yeah, an Argentina-style tango. So, on this bizarre variation of musical genres, you'll be presented with a marathon of bang, crash, screech, until it relaxes you with these nice and sweet little tunes, and then fascinates you, I guess, if you have a taste for the sound of bandoneons or formal ballroom music, which I honestly don't. It's not my cup of tea, I'm more of a rock guy. And then it finally gets to track 42, the last track on the CD, which seems to be complete silence. Okay. Yeah, and the song doesn't even start until almost fucking 5 minutes into the track. Another nice use of silence there, Mr. Yamaoka. Well, there's Yamaoka doing what he does best, scaring the shit out of me with just the sounds he creates. What such fine art. For Silent Hill 2, released in 2001, one of the most remembered themes within the series is the intro, Theme of Laura. Yamaoka sat down at home and took 3 days to compose his theme for the game during the time of its development. He constructed this piece of, quote, a sad melody with a strong beat, end quote, as he states himself in the making of Silent Hill 2. This soundtrack has many great, constantly listenable songs. Akira Yamaoka's guitar started to frequently come into play with this soundtrack. Personally, I greatly admire his experimentation with elements of varying music genres like rock, and there is also industrial, ambient, and even a bit of trip-hop. While he doesn't find melody to be the most important part in a music piece, with the production of audio for Silent Hill 2, Yamaoka says that he intended for people to feel something hearing his music. If you ask me, then Mr. Yamaoka, sir, you have accomplished that well. Not just by freaking me out with your thrashing, bashing pieces, but you have written even some surprisingly peaceful tunes and powerful melodies, especially with your guitar. In his own opinion, Yamaoka, the man himself, says that Silent Hill 2's soundtrack is the best one he has produced. Quite a few of his live performances have started out with Theme of Laura. Now when it comes to audio for Silent Hill 2 besides music, Yamaoka said that he really tried to go beyond Resident Evil's use of what he finds to be quite formal sound effects that people are used to hearing. Not that he didn't do good enough at that with the first game. As long as you don't have the TV on mute, you can tell that the man was trying. No, doing. Released 2003, Silent Hill 3 has the first soundtrack in the series for which Yamaoka intended to vocalize tracks. To find the voice he was looking for, he flew to Los Angeles for an audition. And after around 50 singers came to try out, the one who earned the job was a woman credited on the game as Melissa Williamson. Her voice is introduced right away on the soundtrack CD. Yeah, soundtrack. This one being produced for North America. And on the game right at startup. I must say that Yamaoka and Williamson worked quite well in this introduction theme titled You're Not Here. First of all, the beginning guitar riffs are enough to get your attention. That puts me in a mellow mood. Once I understood the plot led up by the first 3 games, I then found this tune to actually be quite sad. I don't want to get too specific and spoil anything, but let me just mention tragedy. Either way, I still dig this tune. Among the few vocalized tracks on the soundtrack to Silent Hill 3, we hear a few more of those surprisingly peaceful sounding pieces from this genius. Like this one that plays when the character Heather is in the mall. I don't mean to get gushy, but this song, titled In the Small Sanctuary, is just one of the sweetest guitar-consisted tunes I've ever heard. Man, I mean, can you believe that this tune is from a Silent Hill game? You can just imagine yourself out of the house on a peaceful, non-busy day with this song playing in your head. Such abundance of ease. In the process of creating some new skin-crawling sound effects for Silent Hill 3, to make the sound of the creature called the Closer, Yamaoka took the natural sound of a rhinoceros and added digital effects to it to make it sound more monstrous. Also, by total luck, he ran into a program on television about voodoo and heard a deep voice which matched the description to this wicked deep chanting-like voice he was seeking. Along with the tracks on the soundtrack voiced by Melissa Williamson is a song titled Hometown, which is sung by Joe Romersa. The track starts out with the riff which introduced the original title in the series, and then you hear this, well, quite original style voice singing.
So outrageous the toll. You can lose all you have.
This guy has quite a deep vocal. Kind of reminds me of something I'd hear on some Halloween party CD. It's low, it's somber. I suppose it fits with this spooky tune. Huh. Apparently Joe Romersa here was the music supervisor at the Silent Hill 3 soundtrack, and Silent Hill 4. Outside of Silent Hill, Romersa and Melissa Williamson, also known as Mary Elizabeth McGlynn, have both done voice work for various anime titles. They both also sang on the soundtrack to 2004's Silent Hill 4 The Room, last SH title developed by Team Silent. Now this game has one prominent soundtrack. While it's quite an oddball chapter in the Silent Hill series that can put your imagination through a lot, even when compared to the previous chapters in my opinion, it has quite a few very original pieces of music composed for it. The original Japanese release of the SH4 soundtrack includes 2 CDs. Disc 1, which plays the demanding music compositions for the game, and Disc 2, which was a suddenly random discovery for me while hunting for these soundtrack CDs. Tracks on this disc just contain Japanese narrations with music in the background. I wish I could say more than that, but alas, I do not understand Japanese and I have not a clue what's happening on these tracks. The booklet is no help here. When I referred to Wikipedia and saw this statement cited to this web link that, at the time of production of this video, is down, yeah, that helps. The narrations on disc 2 of this SH4 soundtrack are of traditional Japanese stories being read in sync with music being played by Akira Yamaoka. Again, the webpage from apparently where this information came is down. So really, I can't pass this as true information. When I viewed the CD in iTunes, it placed this Taisui Ichiyusai name on the artist tab. Is that who is narrating? I'm sorry, but I just don't have precise answers for this. Oh well, it's not really that relevant anyway. Silent Hill 4 The Room, originally named Room 302, is a side project that was started during the development of Silent Hill 3. Our man, Mr. Yamaoka, was also the producer of SH3 and 4, so it sounds to me like this busy man had a lot of work to do between the years of 03 and 04. Plenty of work, and plenty of play too, eh? And as for this limited edition soundtrack CD with remixes and stuff produced for the US, soundtrack. Get it right. I wonder what was going on in the studio with Yamaoka when there was mixing to be done with this bundle of bouncing beats. Hey. Since Silent Hill 4 released and Team Silent split, Akira Yamaoka had composed for all of the rest of the Silent Hill titles up to 2009's Silent Hill Shattered Memories, as well as he made a non-SH solo album. Soon after Shattered Memories, he left Konami after over a decade of being under their employment and allegedly worked on the game Shadows of the Damned. He has done various performances over the years with various musicians, including Mary Elizabeth McGlynn. Fun fact, the majority of the first Silent Hill film soundtrack consists near completely of Akira Yamaoka's own compositions for the first few games. Yeah, it better have. And by the way, a friend and I do plan to go see the next movie due for release this month, if you're watching this in October 2012. I have hope that even whether or not it's accurate to the story in the games, it'll be a blast. At least Silent Hill is still being widely talked about at this time thanks to this movie's release. And other little products not really relevant for this discussion. This has been the modern-day Suburban kid who collects all the junk that everyone else left behind. Happy Halloween, and thank you for watching.